incinerators are a problem in terms of air quality because and this depends very much on the type of incineration. One category of emissions, as I mentioned, is the heavy metals. That's relatively easy to fix if you just get the metals out of the garbage stream. The other category, which is much more difficult to ameliorate, is the emission of dioxins from incinerators. You need very, very high temperatures, and in order to get those high temperatures, you need to add natural gas or electricity to the arc. And I've already argued that that's a waste of that very clean energy, particularly in BC, where we make our electricity by hydroelectric means. The other additions, of course, are whenever you burn anything, you're going to make emissions of oxides of nitrogen, the greenhouse gases we mentioned, and also volatile organics. These, in the Fraser Valley, these emissions of NOx and VOC result in the formation of urban smog, photochemical pollution. I believe it is actually illogical and of questionable community leadership on the part of Metro Vancouver to actually add a new source of NOx and VOC in the valley, any new sources. Because the citizens, through their efforts, have reduced the emissions, surely the agency which is responsible for managing air quality should not be adding a new emission source.
Actually, our biggest concern in our study when it came to human health was dioxins, which are released in the waste-to-energy incineration process. And although they do use scrubbers, and this is a nanoparticle and it is very difficult to trace and monitor and regulate, the fact of the matter is they're still released. They have a tendency to bioaccumulate in organisms as well as in humans. I mean, we are an organism, but they will bioaccumulate in plants, in animals. Dioxins are actually carcinogens.
Okay.
But of course they do affect the lungs as well, respiratory problems. There are a lot of problems that are associated with dioxins that have been found, so it is definitely a huge concern.
It is a climate issue. I mean, you have all sorts of compounds being produced in a waste-energy incineration facility. You don't know really what the effects of these are going to be in the atmosphere, so there can be all sorts of different reactions and chain reactions from a single product that's formed in this incineration process. And
this is a very serious concern in terms of climate change. These waste energy incinerators are a more significant source of carbon dioxide emission than a coal-fired power plant is for every megawatt of energy that you produce. So I think there are actually reason to be quite concerned. Here we are in a province that has got a commitment to reduce emissions by 33% in the next 10 years or so, and actually even more than that over a longer period of time. This would actually move us aggressively in the wrong direction.
Sure. So we'll build 6 incinerators, and maybe we'll employ 20 people at each of the incinerators, and they're going to be fairly low-end jobs, and the main money will be made by the companies that let the incinerators, and they're not Vancouver companies, they're offshore companies.
You know, that's exactly what it is. They're selling a product, they're selling a business, and they're very good at what they do.
Right now the auditing firm for Metro Vancouver, KPMG, actually did a presentation to the Board of Trade earlier this year, which clearly stated that they thought that they underestimated the capital costs of building this thing. They'd overestimated the revenue that they could generate from it. So, I mean, I think that they need to take a much harder look at the numbers. I don't think the numbers that they're putting forward are accurate.
One of the big objections I have to incineration of garbage is that a municipality will let a contract to have their garbage incinerated, and the company that does the contract, that takes on the contract, is there in order to make money. And that means that if we in Metro Vancouver, as an example, write a contract with an incinerator to burn 250,000 tons of garbage a year, then that company that holds the contract will say, and you've got to keep providing 250,000 tons a year. And if you only provide 100,000 tons, a tenth of a million tons that year, you've got to pay us to compensate us for the stuff we didn't burn. So the net result of that is that an incinerator encourages the production of garbage. It does not encourage reduction of garbage, does not encourage recycling.
Well, I mean, I'll say something that's kind of provocative just for the fun of it. In Afghanistan, there's people growing poppies, and those poppies are being used for heroin production. there's an argument that's made quite often that those guys shouldn't be doing that because that heroin is really harmful to our health. Yet we're talking about a really poor country, and this is the easiest way to generate revenue for a group of people. I don't see how we can go and burn our garbage and make money off of it and poison people, and that's okay. But yet we can say that poor people living in another country can't produce poppies. If somebody said that Metro Vancouver should go and sell heroin because they can make money doing it, there's a really high profit margin. Nobody would take that argument seriously. Now I'm saying this for the sake of being provocative, but I think it's a reasonable comparison because this is a harmful, dangerous direction that they're talking about going in, both in terms of climate change and in terms of the toxins. And if we don't think very hard about this decision, I think we're missing the boat.
The Fraser Valley is an extraordinarily restricted airshed, and we are now discovered that parts of the eastern Fraser Valley are simply not going to be in compliance with the Canada-wide standards for ozone. They are at the moment only barely in compliance. In the future they're unlikely to be because of growing background levels of ozone. But in principle we should not be treating the air as a sewer. That's the fundamental problem of the matter. We want to burn stuff and pump it out of the smokestack and then forget about it. And you cannot. We've shown that over and over again. And it is now evident from decades of measurements around the world that background tropospheric ozone is increasing. It's increasing at the rate of about 5 parts per billion per decade. This is going to require concerted effort of all nations in the northern hemisphere. And part of that must be a reduction in the amount of incineration of garbage.
Yes, and ultimately, it's not about landfills or incinerators. It's about how do we, create green jobs by composting, recycling, and getting rid of the amount of waste that we're producing to begin with. I think it's really just short-sighted thinking, and unfortunately, it seems to me like the people who are supporting this are just looking for something that's too good to be true. They want to turn garbage into gold. They want to, take a problem and turn it into a source of revenue. But just because you can make some money off something doesn't mean it actually solves the problem. And all it takes is a basic understanding of thermodynamics to know that you can't make something disappear. Yeah. The carbon doesn't disappear, and neither does the pollution that's in the garbage. So really the question is, what's the most responsible way we can deal with that stuff for the time being? And my argument is, we know that we can get rid of the organics, and the plastic stuff that we can't recycle, we're better off storing it somewhere than we are burning it, and trying as best we can to try to get rid of the problem as we go forward.